Every year, millions of people perform thousands of crunches, chasing a result that crunches were never designed to give them. The muscle they want is already there. What they are actually fighting is something far harder to outtrain: their own biology. Somewhere beneath the surface of nearly every human torso, a six-pack already exists. It has existed since before you took your first step. The question was never whether you could build it. The question is what has been hiding it. The human abdomen holds one of the most misunderstood muscle groups in the entire body. People call it a six-pack, but that name describes only what becomes visible when conditions are right. The muscle underneath, known as the rectus abdominis, runs in a long sheet from the base of the ribs to the pelvis. It is present in every person on Earth, regardless of size, fitness level, or age. A newborn child has one. A person carrying significant body fat has one. The muscle is never absent. It is simply covered. What lies over that muscle determines whether it can be seen. Between the skin and the muscle sits a layer of subcutaneous fat, and the thickness of that layer is the single greatest factor in abdominal visibility. This is why the phrase "abs are made in the kitchen" became so common in fitness culture. It oversimplifies the science, but it points at something true. No amount of abdominal training will reveal the muscle if the fat layer above it remains thick enough to hide it. Body fat percentage is where the real story begins. Research on visible muscle definition consistently points to a range. For men, abdominal definition tends to begin appearing somewhere between 10 and 14% body fat and becomes sharply visible below 10%. For women, because of essential fat requirements tied to hormonal and reproductive function, that range sits higher, typically between 16 and 20% for initial definition, and lower still for the deeply defined look often seen in competition athletes. These are not arbitrary numbers. They come from the physiology of how the body stores and prioritizes fat. This is also where genetics enters the picture, and where a lot of frustration begins. The body does not lose fat evenly. Fat cells are distributed according to a pattern set largely by genetics and hormonal signaling, and the abdominal region is, for a majority of people, one of the last areas to release stored fat. This explains why someone can have visibly lean arms and shoulders while their midsection remains soft. It is not a failure of effort. It is the order in which the body chooses to burn its reserves, and that order is written well before any training program begins. Genetics also decides what the muscle looks like once it is revealed. The rectus abdominis is divided by connective tissue called the linea alba, running vertically, and by horizontal bands of tendon called tendinous intersections. The number and placement of these intersections is set at birth. Some people have a clean, symmetrical 8-pack. Others have an uneven 4-pack, or segments that sit slightly off-center. Training the muscle harder does not change this pattern. It only affects the size of the muscle beneath it, not the geometry that has existed since development in the womb. This brings the conversation to one of the most persistent myths in fitness, the idea of spot reduction. The belief that exercises targeting the abdomen will burn fat specifically from that area has been tested repeatedly, and the evidence does not support it. A study following weeks of unilateral abdominal training found no measurable difference in fat loss between the trained side of the body and the untrained side. Fat loss is a systemic process, governed by total caloric balance and hormonal signaling, not by which muscle happens to be working hardest in the moment. Crunches build abdominal muscle, but they do not selectively burn abdominal fat. If spot reduction does not work, the actual mechanism does. Fat loss occurs when the body sustains a caloric deficit over time, meaning it expends more energy than it consumes. When that deficit is maintained, the body draws on stored fat across the system, including eventually the abdominal region, following its own genetically determined order. This is why diet plays a larger role in visible abs than most training programs admit. Exercise builds the muscle and supports the deficit through added energy expenditure, but the deficit itself is created primarily through what a person eats and how consistently they sustain that intake below their maintenance level. Protein plays a specific role in this process, beyond simple calorie counting. Higher protein intake helps preserve lean muscle mass while the body is in a deficit, which matters directly for visible abs. Losing weight without adequate protein often means losing a mix of fat and muscle, which can leave the abdominal area smaller but not more defined. Preserving the muscle underneath while reducing the fat above it is what produces the visible outline people associate with a six-pack. This is also why extreme, rapid weight loss so often fails to produce definition. The body sheds muscle along with fat, leaving a smaller version of the same soft midsection rather than defined one. Training still matters, but its purpose is different from what most people assume. Direct abdominal work such as controlled crunches, hanging leg raises, and rotational movements builds the size and thickness of the rectus abdominis and obliques, which affects how pronounced the muscle appears once fat is low enough to reveal it. Compound movements like squats and deadlifts also engage the core heavily as stabilizers, and research on core activation during heavy compound lifts shows abdominal engagement that rivals dedicated ab exercises.
A training plan built entirely around isolated ab movements without addressing overall body composition will build a stronger core hidden beneath fat. A training plan built around sustainable nutrition and general strength training with abdominal work included for muscle development tends to produce visible results faster. Hydration and water retention add one more layer most people never consider. The body can retain water for reasons ranging from sodium intake to stress hormones to sleep quality, and that retained water sits in tissue just above the muscle in the same region where fat resides. This means a person can be at an appropriate body fat percentage for visible abs and still not see them clearly if water retention is masking the outline. This is part of why abdominal definition can visibly change from one day to the next, even when body fat percentage has not meaningfully shifted. Sleep, sodium, alcohol, and stress all move that number more than most people realize. Age and hormonal changes also shift the difficulty of this pursuit over time. Testosterone and growth hormone, both of which support muscle preservation and fat metabolism, decline gradually with age in most people. Cortisol, the stress hormone, has been shown in research to encourage fat storage specifically in the abdominal region when chronically elevated. This is one reason why prolonged high-stress periods in life often coincide with increased midsection fat regardless of diet or exercise habits, and why managing stress is now treated by researchers as a legitimate part of body composition science, not a wellness afterthought. Put together, the science tells a consistent story. The muscle is already there in everyone. What separates a visible six-pack from a hidden one is the layer of fat above it, the water retention layered on top of that, the muscle size built through training, and the hormonal environment shaping how and where the body stores its reserves. None of these factors respond to willpower alone. They respond to a sustained caloric deficit, adequate protein, consistent strength training, quality sleep, and patience measured in months rather than days. The abdominal muscle was never the hard part. Revealing it always was.